Hello, my winner friends, and welcome to this episode of Weight Loss Winformation. I'm titling this one, Thank You for the Gift. You might all be very familiar with the Christmas song, The Gift, and I love that song because I love the song, but mostly because it is recorded by my two very, very favorite musical artists. It is sung in one episode in one version by Colin Ray, who is near and dear to my family's heart, and it is accompanied. The pianist is Joan Brugman, who is like my all-time favorite. Those two are my favorite recording artists, and that tells you a little bit about me. Anyway, The Gift is an amazingly beautiful song, and hence the title of this episode. Thank you for the gift. And I had several things in mind when I thought about this podcast episode. And I listened to a message at my church. That's what they call the sermons, the messages. And I knew I wanted to share the information from that episode. So I was kind of toying with how to mesh the ideas that I had going previously with the information from this message at church. So the ideas that I originally had in mind related to this episode title, Thank You for the Gift, is not exactly where I'm heading, but the gift I am going to be focusing on is the gift of you, bringing your healthiest self to the people in your life who matter the most to you. So that is the greatest gift that you can share with the people in your life. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, then I know you have been working on creating your life, developing yourself into the best version of yourself. And everybody in your life can benefit from that. So thank yourself for working hard on yourself and bringing the gift of a better you to the people you love. So as I was saying, when I initially thought about this podcast episode, what I was thinking about is what a gift it is to be a part of the lives of each and every client that I have the privilege of working with. And I do mean privilege. It is truly, truly an honor to be trusted by other people. You know, I am let into people's hearts, into their emotions, into the good times in their life, and in some cases, into the truly horrific life circumstances that some people have encountered. But mostly, what is a gift to me is to be present as I watch people take healthy risks, attempt to do things they haven't done before, face fears, face memories, face all of their emotions, learn to sit with their emotions instead of distract themselves away from all of their emotions. It's a joy, truly a joy, to hear each and every one of you talk about how you, and in addition, everybody in your life is benefiting from the hard work that you're doing, from the effort you're putting in, from the courage you have to make changes in your behavior, to change the way you're thinking, to go straight in to your relationships rather than wanting to be in a relationship but not knowing how to. And to watch people develop a belief in themselves. It is truly a joy, and I thank you for those gifts. Now, I work hard and I definitely get tired because I do all kinds of things, but I don't get tired of the gift of connection with other people. People who are willing to let me into their lives, people who will allow me to believe in them until they're able and ready to believe in themselves sometimes. I never get tired of this calling in my life. And I know it's a calling because I don't get tired of it. I remain fascinated in learning about how people work and how to make change happen and how to increase your sense of yourself and how to overcome past traumas and how to overcome negative self-talk and negative body image. And it's an amazing thing to watch and learn as I see what people and God can do in their lives. So I do thank you for those gifts of our connecting lives, whether it's through this podcast or through a collegial relationship or having the privilege of working with you on your journey called life. So mostly I thank you for the gift of connection. So then, of course, I'm thinking about all these things, and then I listened to this message, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to share the information from this sermon. And so the original ideas that I had in mind, is not going to be the gist of this episode, but I do want to share with you what I took from this message at church, which I'm going to do. But the gift that I really want you to stick with, the message I want you to take home with you from this podcast episode, is that you are the gift. You taking the time for you learning through this podcast, through Barry Aftercare, through your other support groups, through your time spent alone, through your talks with God or your higher power, through your connections with other people, that you are the gift that you are becoming and that you are sharing with other people. You are enough of a gift just the way you are. But as you journey through life and learn new things and try out new behaviors, try out new thought patterns, we all stand to become better versions of ourselves. And so when I say your healthiest self, I'm not talking about necessarily your physical health, but yes, yay for that too. But I'm talking about your whole self, your mind, your body, your spirit, all of who you are. And as you improve in each of those areas, you become more and more of a gift to the people who look to you, and you don't even know sometimes who those people are, who are looking to you as an example of how to live life. All right, so even though most of you will probably hear this episode after the holiday season is over, and most of your family gatherings are going to be in the past by the time you hear this, because this message at the church was geared toward the holiday season. But the truth is we're forever going to have family gatherings. So for some families, for some few families, these gatherings are stress-free or relatively stress-free, joy-filled, laughter-filled, fun, relaxing, and overall soul-refreshing. But for other families, well, not so much. So the message that I listened to was part one of a 3-part series, and it's called Anticipating Christmas. And basically it was a chat between Andy Stanley, who you know I love, and a guest he had at church with him named Stephen Cuss. Now, Stephen Cuss is a pastor from another state, but he's written some books and on leadership and different things, and he and Andy have had a relationship for some time, I guess, collegial. But Stephen Cuss is originally from Australia, so I just love a good Australian accent to begin with. Shout out to my good friend, Andrea Schroeder. But he talks about some of the things that go on, not only in families, but in organizations. And he's talking in this episode about reactivity, because he was talking about when families gather for the holidays, there's oftentimes some reactive emotions, some reactive behaviors within different people, ourselves not being an exception. So the conversation between these two men was really geared toward not getting caught up in reactivity. Don't get caught up in other people's drama. Don't get caught up trying to fix other people's issues or trying to make people happy when you're in the presence of other people, because reactivity is, as they were saying, contagious. Reactivity is contagious. And when we're around other people who are being reactive, we can catch it and we can spread it. So it's like this little microcosm disease in a family that we can catch and we can spread, and we want to stay out of the fray. We want to stay out of the reactivity, and we want to keep ourselves from reacting to things going on around us. Of course, it's easier said than done, as are most things in life, but think about it. Think about you're with your family, maybe your sister and your cousin. They always fought as kids. Now they're in their 40s, but they start arguing, and it reminds you of when they were like in the 4th grade. So they're reacting to one another, and that triggers your anxiety because you want, you're a people pleaser. You want everybody to be happy. You want to try to get in there and control the situation. So now you've caught their reactivity and you are reacting to your own need to control the situation, to diffuse the conflict because it's upsetting to you. So now you're caught up in the reactivity and all of you are reacting, and then Aunt Joan sees what's happening and now she catches the reactivity going on among the three of you, and she comes over and by God, she is going to scold all of you like you're in 4th grade and put you in your places and tell you ought to sit down and go to your corners and not talk to each other till you can come out and make up. So reactivity is contagious. But the thing is, what happens when we get engaged in the reactivity is it disconnects us from being our best selves. So as you are growing and learning along your life journey, and we are working to become a better version of ourselves every day, we want to lessen our reactivity. Now, a lot of times on the podcast, we talk about reacting to triggers that make us engage in emotional eating or trigger some kind of food addiction. We're going to be talking about emotional reactivity tonight because those things, of course, can also lead us to wanting to calm ourselves with food or numb ourselves with an addictive substance, whether it's sugar or something else. So reactivity, which, as I said, is contagious, disconnects us from ourselves, and it absolutely disconnects us from the other people. And when we are at these gatherings, we want to be connected with these people in a healthy way. So the people who are reactive are spreading it, and those who catch it are not bringing the gift of their healthiest self to the gathering. So Andy Stanley and Steve Cuss were talking about how not to get caught up in reactivity. Now, Stephen Cuss, as I said, he's a pastor, but he was talking about his days early on in his training when he was doing hospital chaplaincy and some of the things he learned from that he is now using to educate people about this reactivity. And what he was told by his mentors as he did this was that when he was going in as a hospital chaplain, he could not get caught up in his own reactivity to the sadness or maybe the fighting from between people or the tension that you could feel sometimes if one person wanted to follow this plan of medical action, he's like, he had to learn to manage himself when he was with a family. And that's how he started this learning process, which led him to write some of these books. But I thought, what an interesting perspective that, the mentors were like, listen, your job is not to go in there and manage the family. Your job is to go in there and manage yourself so you can be present with the family. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So when we go into our family gatherings, it doesn't even have to be family. It could be a work environment, because he does a lot of this stuff in organizations. And he talks about when he goes into an organization, his job is to manage himself and not get caught up in the reactivity of the managers or the different levels of organizational leadership. The same was true when he went into a room with a family who had somebody in a medical crisis. So, great lesson for us. And one of the things that I want you to take from this is that if we can prevent ourselves from getting caught up in or catching reactivity, and instead manage our own self. So let's say you're a people pleaser and you want to calm things down. You want to go in there and you want to manage the people who are in conflict. That's not what we need to do. What we need to do is manage that internal feeling of, oh my gosh, I can't handle this conflict. I don't like it. It upsets me. So that's my reactivity. So if I can manage that rather than trying to fix what's going on externally, I'm going to be showing up as my better self. So this is kind of the lesson they were talking about. Now, one of the things that he talks about with reactivity is that it's very predictable. And he was talking again about families. And when you go into your family dynamics, you pretty much know who's who and what's what. So most families have somebody who's going to come in and start preaching about politics. Talk about a disconnector. It disconnects because people are going to react to that. Some on their side, some not on their side, and there's going to be a lot of reactivity going on there. Now, how that triggers you and your reactivity is what you need to focus on. Not trying to go in there and say, hey, can't we just all get along, and can't we just bring peace, and can't we respect each other in spite of different... Your job is to manage your own reactivity, which is make this go away. But it's predictable. We know Uncle Freddie is going to bring the politics and he's going to be the blowhard. We know that Cousin Sally and Sister Susan are going to butt heads. They've butted heads for 40 years. So we know this. We know it. It is predictable. We know that if Mama gets upset, she's going to burst into tears, and now everybody's going to be feeling it. We know who does what and when they do it. So it's very predictable. So we can sort of learn to manage our reactivity before going into these events. It's not all that different than using a personal protection plan to avoid emotional eating when we go into these kinds of situations. Because for a lot of us, our own reactivity, whatever that may be, and we'll talk about some of those things that they brought up in this talk, are things that may lead us to emotional eating. So we want to know what our reactivity, what our triggers for getting reactive are, and we want to manage those. Because when you get together with your family, these dynamics already exist. As Stephen Cuss was saying, the dynamics in the families that he was meeting with already exist. So he's not going in there to manage the families or the dynamic between them. What he says we need to do, in addition to managing our own reactivity, is to further define ourselves. That was interesting to me. I'm like, what is he talking about? So I'll explain that bit in just a little while, what it means to manage our own reactivity and further define ourselves. And this is the part of the process that leads us to being our best selves, managing our own reaction to what's going on around us, and to further define ourselves. So those are the two jobs we have when we enter these family gatherings, where we can pretty much predict who's going to be who and who's going to do what and who's going to drink too much and get too loud and who's going to slam the door because they're upset at whatever. We know. You know the dynamics you're walking into with your own family. So you can sort of predict or anticipate some of the landmines. Now, what I'm sharing here is almost verbatim from this message. And this message is on YouTube. You can watch it. I have the link in the show notes. This is not Connie's information. This is the wisdom of Stephen Cuss and Andy Stanley that I'm sharing. So I don't want to take credit for any of this, because this is, like I said, almost verbatim what they talked about. So just know that as I move forward. I'll tell you when I'm back to my own thoughts. All right, so they were talking about how you can predict what you're walking into, because reactivity is very predictable. And so if you can anticipate some of the landmines, some of the things that have happened historically over the years with certain different people, then you can be more observant and more noticing of those things and less reactive. Therefore, not catching the reactivity and not disconnecting yourself from yourself. And that is part of that business of further defining yourself. You don't have to define yourself by your own reactivity. You can define yourself in a new way, which is part of that change in thinking that I am so impressed with a lot of the people that I meet. Now, some of these landmines that these guys, Andy and Stephen, were talking about are relational. Like Cousin Freddie, who's always spouting off about politics. That disconnects people. Pretty typically, discussions of politics disconnects us from other people. That's a landmine I want to avoid. And I want to avoid my own reaction when people are discussing politics. I have a very strong reaction internally to political arguments, because growing up, that was kind of the Sunday entertainment in the neighborhood. The adults would come to our house and discuss politics, which to me as a child was horrifyingly frightening, because they would be pounding their fists on the table. They would be using quite colorful language. They would be calling each other names. It was like, I was like, why are all the neighbors here and they're all fighting? So any kind of political discussion causes me great anxiety. So if I can anticipate that this group of people in the family are going to go there, because it's going to happen in a lot of families, then I can anticipate when I feel that anxiety, when I feel that compulsion to just try to calm everybody down. I don't have to do that. I don't have to catch their reactivity. I can calm myself and further define myself as someone who doesn't have to fix it. I don't need to fix it. It's not mine to fix. So you know some of these landmines. Some of the landmines, and these are the ones you want to be especially conscious of in these situations, are the internal landmines. In other words, your internal stressors, your, I'm going to say, unhealthy desire, need to calm down the other landmines because you can't handle the tension. Or you want everybody to be happy, or you're the people pleaser, or you're the funny person, and it's all an attempt to quiet down the reactivity of other people. A better approach is to know that, okay, I'm going to have my reactions. My job is to calm my own reactions, not to catch the reactivity of other people and join in making matters worse. So Stephen Cuss and Andy Stanley were saying, if you can be observant and notice those things, you're much less likely to catch and spread the reactivity. So as you prepare, again, it might be too late this season, but you're going to meet with your family again. You're going to be in a difficult work situation. Maybe your friends have some, reactors in the group. In any situation that we're in, if we can observe and notice what's going on around us, and what's going on within us, we're less likely to catch and spread the reactivity. So Stephen Cuss would say that he didn't really realize that when he walked into a room, maybe as a chaplain, when maybe someone was dying, he would get triggered. And he called these things false needs. He said he would get triggered and would need to manage his own false needs so that he could be present with other people as they went through their pain. And I thought, this is really important. So what he's referring to as these false needs is like when I am triggered and I want to calm everybody down, I want to have control, or I'm triggered and I want everybody to be happy because I'm a peacemaker, or I'm triggered and I think, well, maybe I can make a joke here and kind of lighten things up. Those are my triggers. Those are my false needs because it's really not mine to fix. That's why he calls these things false needs. And he said some examples of people's false needs are, I'm going to have the last word. So maybe you know somebody who's always got to have the last word. Or maybe you have somebody in your family or in an organization who they're the one that's going to put you in your place, by golly. And one of the things he said as he was talking is, people sometimes get online and they want to spew their reactiveness online. And he said, as if what the world needs is to have one more comment from me. And he talked about some things that are really normal, healthy needs, like respect or being understood or being heard. Those are normal, healthy needs, but they become unhealthy needs if it's like, by God, you're going to respect me and you're going to respect me right now. So it's like this unhealthy attempt to control as opposed to talking to somebody later and saying, I really felt disrespected and I would appreciate in my home, blah, 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 to do it in a healthy way. So these unhealthy needs, these reactions, this reactivity within us, even if it's not a bad thing in and of itself, it's, I have to have it right now, and by God, everybody's going to listen to me. Those are your own triggered reactions. And it might be a reaction to the political arguments, or it might be a reaction to whose cookies are the better cookies, or your reaction, your false need is because you hate conflict so much and you're triggered. You want to butt in and you want to make the tension go away. That's your false need. I need to make this better. Like when I was a child and my mother, this was predictable. Reactivity is predictable. Whether it was Christmas or Mother's Day or any kind of holiday or celebration where she, it would have been good for her to get a gift from her husband, my father, and she never would. And she would very predictably cry. And of course that would trigger, I need to make my mommy happy. I need to fix her. I need to make it better for her. And then I would go into fix-it mode, as probably most of my other siblings did too. I don't know. But so to be prepared for, if I'm going into a situation where my mom is and I know she's going to cry, then I don't need my false need to fix her or to make her happy get triggered so that I catch the reactivity in the room. And then maybe my being triggered and worked up triggers, and my husband catches it. And then he's trying to fix me, and then, and on it goes. So the reactivity is often very predictable. But if I can anticipate it and I can go in with an attitude that I'm going to observe this and I am going to check my own reactivity so that I don't get plugged into this. And I can make a protection plan, so to speak. Call my friend, step out of the room, remind myself that it's none of my business, all of those things. So we need to restrain our reactivity so we can be present and connected with other people. That doesn't mean the people who are involved in the argument about whose cookies are better. It means I'm choosing to be present with some people who are not involved in that. And that is super big growth, not catching the reactivity, not getting caught up in it, and not passing it on. Now, another point, a great point, I loved this, that Stephen Cuss made in this is that there's a difference between process and content. And as a therapist, when we go to school, we learn a lot about process and content, but that's not something that we talk about in conversation with people. But it's an important thing for you to have an understanding of, because people pay attention to content, but we react. Our reactivity is triggered by the process of what's going on. So let me kind of give you an example. And again, this is what Steve Cuss was saying. This isn't Connie. He said, we listen to the words people say. We have an understanding of what they say. But what we pay attention to emotionally is the way people relate to one another. So it's not so much what people are saying. So if I overheard my dad say to my mom, that really upsets me. Could we talk about that later? So I hear the words, but I see the process, which was kind, which was gentle, and that's what either triggers me. If I heard that, I'd be like, okay, they're going to work it out. If I hear him say, the words are going to be the same, but the process, the interaction, the way people are relating to each other is very different. So if I hear him say, that really upsets me, we're going to talk about this later. Now I'm going to be heightened. I'm going to be anxious. I'm going to be afraid. I'm going to be triggered. Because it's not the words. It's the relationship. It's the way they're relating to one another. So in this message, this sermon, Stephen Cuss is talking about how therapists, especially the ones I always refer people to, licensed marriage and family therapists, because they're systems therapists, meaning they look at how the family relates to one another. What are the dynamics in that family? Like he talks about marriage counselors, they hear the same stuff from most people. They're arguing about money and sex and raising kids and saving and spending and all of those things. The therapist isn't so much interested in that, because that's what most couples fight about. What they're interested in is the pattern, the way people argue. And this was so interesting to me because he talks about how the patterns are very predictable. And then he related it to the office. He said, if you're at an office meeting, he said, you can count on the same person to use the same words in every meeting. So they have some jargon words that they say. He said, there's always the same people who seem to get the final word in. There are people, and this was funny, I laughed at this. He was saying, there are people at meetings, and they're always the same people who don't speak up in the meeting. And then how he said it is, they have a little secret meeting after the meeting. I thought that was really funny because I've seen that happen in organizations. So that may also happen in your family. They don't speak up when the family's discussing something, but they're going behind everybody's back and creating little pods of reactivity by having their own little meetings after the meeting. So you can approach family gatherings in the same way. The predictable patterns, and maybe you get tripped up by them. We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect, but they shouldn't surprise you. These patterns, these processes that take place within your family dynamics are pretty much going to be the same. And one of the things that really caught me in this is because for years and years and years, Steve and I had the exact same pattern of argument. And I'm not kidding you, either one of us could have scripted. If we were coming to the table with something about finances, it didn't matter. Here's how it would go. He would say this, I would react this way. He would react this way, I would react this way. And pretty soon we are so far off the topic that we brought in. So it could be anything, but our pattern was exactly the same, filled with defensiveness and sarcasm and all the things. And so we knew we had to change our dance. That's how I called it. Every couple has a dance, and they know the dance steps, and they know who's going to say what, and they know who's going to do what. And until somebody learns a new dance step, things are just going to play out the same way over and over and over again. And that's part of what we needed to do in an individual and couples therapy is we needed to learn a new dynamic. We needed to learn to get out of our own reactivity with one another because we were caught in a spiral of reacting to each other. So I thought that was really, really, really impressive that he was talking about this. So it is with you and your partner, you and your family members. Remember, our job when we go into these systems, these family gatherings, is to know ahead of time, all right, these are the dynamics I'm walking into. So-and-so is going to argue with so-and-so. So-and-so is going to be the last word. So-and-so is going to be the, conspiracy theorist. Somebody's got... And so I know going in there. And so I can predict and I can work on how I do or do not react. So I shouldn't be surprised walking in there. So what we're typically reacting to, how we get caught up in the reactivity is about, like I said, what's going on inside of us. It's the anxiety about what's happening outside of us. We develop our own anxiety, and that's what we need to pay attention to. That is what we need to address, not what's going on between other people. So, in this talk, Stephen Cuss talks about our true needs, like if we have a need for, if we're in danger, our true need is to be secure. We get the fight or flight thing going, our adrenaline gets going, whatever. And then when we're out of danger, we process it by talking about it. We tell people about it. We share our thoughts. We share our feelings. And that's how we kind of work through these things. Now, when we have these, what he's referring to, false needs, the needs to my anxiety and my need to make mommy happy, or your need to be a people pleaser, or your anxiety, and so you use humor to kind of, quell the tension in the room. That's my false need, and it's driven by the same adrenaline, but it's a microdose. It's not like if I'm see a car coming head on to me, but it's a microdose of that same adrenaline. And so my body doesn't really know if I just saw a snake or if I just want you two to get along. It's kind of going to react the same way. It's, I need this snake to go away. I need these two people to get along. It's that rush of adrenaline and fear and anxiety within myself. And so what I need to tend to is not the two people get along. It's what's going on inside of me. And then he talks about these 5 false needs, which are how we catch reactivity and how we pass it along. So, and he does this in a spiritual way, and I'm going to pass it on like he passed it on because I think it's really great. And if this isn't your thing, it's not your thing. But to me, this is a gift that I learned from this message that I am sharing with you. And I do encourage you to go watch this because they do a much better job of what I'm trying to share. And it's pretty funny. Again, the link to the message, the sermon, is in the show notes. But you can also look up Andy Stanley on YouTube, and it's, what did I say the name of the topic was? Or his 3-part series is, see. Getting ready for Christmas or anticipating Christmas. Yeah, anticipating Christmas. So you can just look that up if you want to. All right, but these reactions that we have, according to Stephen Cuss, are about wanting to have control, right? That's the human side, is we want to have control because I don't like this tension. So I have this false need to create control. What I really need to do is to trust. He says the human size version of this is I need to trust. And what I need to trust is that God is in control. So the truth is, God is in control, but I'm feeling like I need to play God and control this situation. So remembering that I'm not God. I don't need to control this situation. God is in charge of this situation. So the human size is recognizing that I need to trust. The God size version of this is God is in control. This is not my business. So when that reactivity comes up, I need to go, it's not my business. All is well. God is in charge. So control is one. Perfection. Anybody out there struggle with control or perfection? So if we believe that we have to be perfect, which is never going to happen, we're in trouble. God is perfect. That's the God size version of this. The human size situation is that we are not perfect. Our job is to improve and clarify. So if we're in a situation and we are emotionally triggered by somebody else's reactivity, our job is to say, okay, I can improve myself. And I'm going to clarify that my false need for perfection here, or having my family look perfect, is not my business. God is perfect. I am not. My job is to do the best I can in this situation and not try to make the whole situation perfect. So we have control, which is how we get triggered and reacted in one of our false needs. We have perfection. The third one is having to have the answer. Listen, if you just listen to me, I know the answer. I know how it is. And this can be in relation to anything. But again, we're human. We don't have all the answers. God does have all the answers. So again, we are to trust. I don't have to know the answer to this. My anxiety, my trigger, my getting caught up in this reactive landmine, I don't have to know how to fix it. This is God's domain. God knows the answer and God will fix it in God's time. All right. The next one is sounds like a really good thing, but it can be a bad thing because it's being there for people when they're in pain. So your sister and your cousin just had that argument and they're both off crying and you want to be there for both of them, Sometimes we don't know the difference between what's your need and my need to be needed. So I want to rush in there and I want to help you and hug you and take care of you and fix this for you. Is that because I'm really tending to your need, or is that my need to be needed? It could be both, but if it's your need to be needed in that moment, then that's not the healthiest thing. So your reaction is to rush in and be the savior of the moment. Well, that's why they call it a God complex, right? God is there for everybody. We don't need to be. So if I'm wanting to be the hero, I fixed it for everybody involved. That's kind of a selfish motive. That's not my job. My job is to manage, leave them alone. Let them work through their own process. They need to process this, think it through, feel all their feelings, come to their own conclusion. That's why God is there. God is there for all of us. I don't need to be there for everybody. I don't need to fix everybody's issues. I don't need to fix. And, that's part of being a therapist. Some of us we have that tendency. We need to be needed. And I had a professor one time point that out to me. You got to watch out, Connie, because part of this is probably related to your need to be needed. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And as the years go by and I realize I don't need to be needed all the time in every situation. And that's why I like at retreats, people swoop in when people are, or in any group therapy, people swoop in and want to fix it for the person who's in pain. And so I'm like, nope, back off, don't touch them, let them be in their pain. And it's not always the need to be needed, but it's like, I don't like the discomfort. So that's my reactivity jumping in so I don't have to watch this person being in pain. We don't like to watch people being in pain, but you know what? It's their journey. They need to go on their journey. They need to feel their feelings. They need to process through it. They need to let God be there for them. I don't need to fix it for them. That's our reactivity. Also, the last one he talks about is approval. We want to be approved of. We want mom to approve of us. We want auntie to approve of us. We want all the people to approve of us and say, what a good job you've done. What a good girl you are. We need to let go of the need for everybody to approve us because God approves of us. So there's a very spiritual element to this. So remember, here's the message. Reactivity is contagious. It's predictable. We can look at it ahead of time and go, my job is not to fix, not to control, not to have the answers, not to be the hero, not to be the control freak, not to be the perfect person. My job is to manage my own reactivity so that I don't spread it to others and learn more about who I am. So maybe with my reactivity, I'm like, okay, why is this so difficult for me? Because I don't like to see other people in pain. Well, I don't have to be the hero here. I need to recognize that people need to go through their pain to find their own answers, just as I have. Or maybe I go, you know what? I just need this family to be perfect. I just need it to be perfect. So I'm going to jump in there and I'm going to try to fix it. So when I acknowledge that, when I can stop and go, what's this about for me? And take that pause, right? There's power in the pause. What's this about for me? How can I get to better understand myself here? Well, I know that this is because I want it to all be perfect. Well, it's not my job to make things perfect. Oh, and by the way, things aren't going to be perfect. But I can choose to become more comfortable with my discomfort and let them work out their own issues. So this is the message here, that as we can learn to manage our own reactivity, not jump in there with it and get caught up in it and spread it on to others, we learn more about ourselves. And this is how we become our best selves, by not being all up in everybody's anxiety and reaction. So when they were talking about these 5 things that I just mentioned, he said those things are God's territory. And I love how he put this. He said, we were made in the image of God. And what we're doing when we react and try to fix is we're trying to do God-sized work. And therefore we become very reactive. So when we try, I love this verbiage here. He said, when we try to handle more than God has called us to carry, we become reactive. So learning to relax and be human-sized is really important. Meaning, I'm not God. I don't need to step in here and try to play God. I need to manage my own anxiety and let this play out how it's supposed to between that person and God, or those people and God. This is not my business. I'm trying to handle more than God has called me to handle. Really important messages. So when we try to manage our own anxiety, we're trying to play God, not our job. All right, he says, we live in a world of rampant reactivity. Rampant reactivity. Everybody's reacting to everybody else. You get on social media, and everybody's reacting to everybody else's comments and everybody's got their undies in a wad. And, he says there's a gap when we're triggered. There's a gap between me and myself. There's a gap between me and other people. There's a gap between me and God because we get all caught up in our reactivity. It's an beautiful words here. These were their words, not mine. Reactivity is an automatic response, but it can be a deliberate response. So I can get all caught up and play God and try to fix it and get control and make it perfect, or I can deliberately respond to my own anxiety and go, God's got this. I don't need to intervene. So he says, pay attention to how you're feeling. And he says, practice with people outside of your family. And I loved how he stated this. He was basically saying, excuse me, that where there's an umbilical cord attached, and he said it doesn't need to be necessarily mom and child. But when it's family, it's much, much more difficult not to catch the reactivity and not to pass on the reactivity. He says, so practice with people who are outside of your family. He said, the ones who drive you crazy. And he gives a great example of how he watches the Gilmore Girls because they drive him crazy with their dynamic. So he practices managing his own response. He says, pay attention to how you feel and approach the situation with curiosity, not a need to fix it. Just watch. Let it go. Give it to God. Don't involve yourself so you don't catch it or spread that reactivity. One of the things he suggests is ask who or what takes up too much space in your brain. Like, is there a person that you're constantly thinking about and, they're kind of driving you crazy and you want to put them in your place, or you want to set them straight, or you want to, whatever it is. That may be an example of if they're taking up too much real estate in your brain and you're getting all worked up about it, that's a reactivity response that you can work on, and you can choose not to catch it. He says it's optional. I love that. So that's that thinking change. You know what? I can get all worked up in this, and by God, I'm going to tell them how it is, and, I'm going to make them see my point of view, and I'm going to have the last word on that, and I'm going to make them respect me, and I'm going to make them understand me, and I'm going to make them listen to me. That's my own reactivity. As opposed to, you know what? My ranting and raving is not going to change their mind. This is between them and God. This is for them to figure out. What's for me to figure out is how to manage my own strong emotions here. So I need to work that out with God. I need to process that. And that's how I learn more how to be my better self. So what Stephen Cuss was saying is spend less time trying to convince somebody of something and take more time working to define yourself. I choose to be non-reactive. I choose to let go and let God. That's a big saying in the 12-step world. Let go and let God. I'm trying to control it. I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to manage people. I'm trying to make the situation better. But that's to cure my own anxiety. What I need to do is not react. I can understand and recognize and feel my anxiety. So I notice it. Oh, what is this bad feeling I'm having? I name it. I want to have control. I want to diffuse the situation. I want things to be perfect. One of those 5 things. So I recognize it. I notice it. I name it. And then I diffuse it. Meaning, I'm not giving into this. I'm not catching the reactivity. I'm going to diffuse it. I'm going to spend my time engaging in good quality connection with somebody else over here. I'm going to take myself out of this situation for a few minutes and read something I find inspirational. I'm going to remove myself from this situation and I'm going to call somebody. So it's very similar to when I suggest people make a personal protection plan so that you don't engage in emotional eating. It's identify it, how I'm feeling. Notice it in my body. I'm tense or I'm tight or I'm anxious or I'm shaking or whatever it is. Then name it. Oh, I'm anxious. I'm worried. I'm scared they're going to get it. Okay, then I'm going to remove myself. I'm going to diffuse this. This is my reaction to something going on outside of me. I don't need to get involved. So, those are the ways that Stephen Cuss says to kind of work on yourself rather than catching the reactivity and passing it on. He says, the opposite of anxiety is not calm, it's curiosity. So rather than either getting caught up in the reactivity of other people, you can try to calm yourself down, but become very curious. What is the dynamic between them? More importantly, what's going on with me? Why do I feel this strong need to fix or control or have the last word or make it better? So become curious and then deal with yourself. He and Andy talk about how reactivity is a form of anxiety. So if I'm reacting to what's going on around me, it's about anxiety. And my attempts to control my anxiety are when I get caught up in the reactivity because it's contagious. We catch it, we spread it. So when you feel that anxiety, when you notice that tension, ask yourself which one of these false needs that's appearing real in the moment is going on with me. Do I need to control? Do I need to try to be perfect? Do I need to have the answer? Do I need to take care of the person who's in pain? Do I need to seek approval? Get out of God's territory, become people-sized, meaning I don't have to control it. God's got this. I don't have to be perfect. God's perfect. I'm never going to be, nor are these other people. I don't have the answers here, so I'm not going to butt in and act like I have them. God has the answers. Let go, let God. God will take care of these people. I don't need to jump in and take away their pain, and I don't need approval because I have approval where it really matters. So those are God's territory. Let go, let God. So as I said, they make mention of how much easier it is to fix these things in organizations because we have a lifetime of emotional connection wrapped up with our families. And so it's much easier to catch the reactivity and to pass it on. So he says, be kind. We talk a lot about being compassionate with ourselves on this podcast. As you work through this, be compassionate with yourself. You're not going to get it right every time, but work on going in prepared with an attitude of observation of self and decisions when it comes to your own choice of behavior. Be curious about what's going on with you. Be curious about what's going on with other people. Ask curious questions. God, what's going on with me? What's going on that I feel the need to control this? What's going on that I feel like I need to step in and play you? And remember that when we react, when we get caught up in the reactivity, it disconnects us from ourselves because now we are just like freaking out and needing to make it better. We can sit with our own discomfort and learn about ourselves and say, I'm capable of carrying this discomfort. I'm capable of letting go and letting God. We disconnect from other people because if we get caught up in their reactivity and we start reacting, there's going to be walls between us or distance between us. That's not what we're wanting. And it definitely disconnects us from God because we're trying to play God. So one of the things they suggest, and we've talked about this a lot in Berry Aftercare and on the podcast, Weight Loss Winformation, is have a mantra. I'm not in charge. I'm not in charge. Let go and let God. Come up with whatever mantras work for you, but go in with your mantra close to the vest Maybe you need to have a little slip of paper in your pocket or on your phone. And your best efforts are not going to make other people behave better. But your best efforts to hands off, don't need to control, make it perfect, have the answer, will help you handle it better. One of the things they talk about is, or at least my interpretation of it is, get out of yourself. Don't make your need to make things smooth get you caught up in this reactivity, because it's really not about you. If other people are engaged in reactivity with one another, that's about them. Spend more time defining yourself, meaning work on being well. Don't take on their reactivity. Work on the best gift you have to give others, your well self. So all of that is information from the discussion between Andy Stanley and Stephen Cuss. And again, the link to their talk will be in the show notes. But it's worth watching, because this is really good self-help information that all of us can utilize when we go into our family dynamics or our work dynamics or our friendship dynamics, and we know the score. We know who's going to be doing what. We don't have to get caught up in it. The only thing we can control is ourselves. The only thing we can focus on is ourselves. And ask yourself, where am I repeating these patterns? Where do I run into problems time and time again? What is costing me too much? Is it trying to make peace? Is it trying to be the one with the answers? Is it trying to be the funny one? Where do you find yourself reacting more and more often? And those are the places that you can work on it more intensely. So, a lot of great information in there. Not what I started out for with this episode about thank you for the gift. The gift for me is being part of your journey. This podcast for me is a gift in knowing that you are listening to it. And I thank you for that gift. For those of you who I have the privilege of working with more closely, I thank you for your gifts of allowing me into your lives in such a deep way. And then I thank you for putting the effort into, changing the things that are your obstacles, identifying your obstacles. This is how you want to be. This is how you are. I thank you for putting effort into identifying the obstacles that are in your way of being your best self and working through those and getting closer to being who you want to show up as every day. And please, please, please thank yourselves for all the hard work that you are doing to become the gift of your best self, to share with those people who look up to you and admire you and respect you and love you and treasure you. Give yourself the gift of admiring, respecting, loving, and treasuring yourself, and show others through your courage and your actions to improve your life on a day-to-day basis, mind, body, and spirit. So maybe you want to thank somebody else and share this information with them. So give this podcast episode to them as a gift. All right, guys, I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season, however you celebrate the holidays, and much respect to each and every holiday, custom, faith, tradition. Thank you for being part of my journey and for the ways you add to this. I do thank you for the gift of relationship. I'll see you next time.